side of it they're going to be on. When there's a judgment, it's always for somebody, it's against somebody else. So if we choose to make sure we're on Yahweh's side of everything, we're going to make sure that we're on the right side of the judgment when it comes. And we want to make sure that we're putting ourselves in a place where we can experience his favor, because that's another thing that's been talking about, is this year is a year of favor, and it's a year of where you're going to speak things and the enemy's going to flee. You know, and if we don't take our position, if we don't hold on to our position, the enemy is going to overtake our position. You know, it's an active position we need to hold, and we got to learn how to hold it, and we got to learn to hold it continuously, not to get in and out of our position, but we need to stay in our position all the time. And in some ways, this Torah portion this week kind of covers a lot about being in position and versus being out of position.
So we're going to go over a few things that we need to be doing to make sure that we're staying in position, making sure that we are successfully able to fight off the attacks of the enemy. Because, you know, he's ramped up his game. He knows his end is near. And so he's really been all out just throwing a lot of stuff at people. So we're going to jump into the Torah portion. It actually starts with Exodus 30:11. Starts at Exodus 30:11, but we're going to actually pick up at chapter 31. You know, like Jordan was saying, all these Torah portions that we read, they all have vital keys in them to help us, you know, even though he was speaking to them at that time, but he's speaking to us at this time, because this is for us also. And there's vital keys for us out of all these Torah portions to be living successfully and victoriously in the times that we're in. You know, just like we've been talking about over the last, couple weeks or so with Esther and everything like that. Just as Esther was born for such a time as that, we were born for such a time as this. But we were born for such a time as this to make sure that we're accomplishing the destiny that Yahweh has set before us, to make sure that we're walking successfully and victorious in this life that he's given us. We all have a decision to make. Like Jordan was saying, we got to decide what side of the line are we going to be on. Remember years and years ago, Dad did that whole thing about drawing a line in the sand, and what side of the line are you going to be on? And we've got to make a quality decision. And a quality decision is different than just a normal decision. A quality decision is a rock-solid decision. It's that once you make that decision, there's no turning back. It's that you're at the point of no return. And what you decide, that's it. And we've got to be making sure we're making the right quality decisions. Because the enemy will throw a lot of stuff to try to create a picture that, well, it looks better on the other side. The grass is greener on the other side. Things are so much sweeter on the other side.
Then you find out that the grass it's AstroTurf. It's the fake grass that they have on football fields. You think the grass is greener over there, but it doesn't have anything of nutritional value. It's not live.
So he'll try to do whatever he can to create a picture in you, to follow a different way than what Yahweh has for you. But we all know in here that the way that Yahweh has is the best way for us. And when it comes down to it, even though in the natural, we're not people that are supposed to be going by sight. We're supposed to be people that are seeing that things are not as they appear. They're not as they appear. On both sides, for good and for evil. But things are not as they appear when the devil's trying to tell you something that's contrary to the word of Yahweh. Things are not as they appear when the devil's trying to tell you, well, yeah, you know what? Well, you've got this sickness, you're going to have to deal with it. It is not what it appears, because Yahweh says something different. He says, you're the healed of the Lord. Okay, he says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. It's not the way it appears if the enemy's trying to say to you, you know what? You've done all you can do. You've run the course. Yay. It's time to just throw in the towel and quit and go sit on the beach somewhere with your iced tea. Things are not as they appear, okay? And that's not the way it's supposed to be. we're supposed to keep on swimming. Okay, we're supposed to keep on going. You know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, okay? And it's not over till it's over. It's not over till he says it's over. And it may not seem like it sometimes, but if it doesn't seem like it, it's because you're looking too much in the natural. You're looking too much in the natural, and you're letting the natural impact you too much. You're not doing what you should be doing with this. Who cares what's going on in the natural? If you're rock solid and you know who you are and whose you are, and you know that you serve the God, the creator of all of heaven and earth, and that you know, victory is yours, you're more than an overcomer, there's more for us than against us, that he has given us all strength to do all things. If you know that, whatever may come in the natural may come. But it doesn't matter, because if you're standing in your position, if you're standing with your shield of faith and with your armor of God on, and knowing who you are and whose you are, nothing of the enemy can penetrate. Like Mama's always said, you hear those darts like a distant ping, you know, in the distance, just ping, ping off your shield. They don't even come any closer. So,
you know, and the whole idea of the fact that when you're facing these situations, the enemy always is putting pressure on you. There's always pressure. You notice how much pressure that there has been? Again, like you said, because the time is short. He knows his time is short, so he's just launched an all-out war against us. But all you have to do to start going with the natural, to start going with the pressure, is nothing. The instant you start relaxing, the instant you start to let go of, well, I'm just going to you're going downstream. And the current is pretty strong right now. You know, when you start feeling like, I feel like it's molasses moving forward, it's because of how strong the current is going back the other way. But that's when, you know, you got to dig a little deeper. You know, you got to dig in for the strength that he's placed inside of you to keep rowing forward, to keep moving forward. Don't relax for an instant. Don't relax on your faith. Now, there's a rest in him, but not relaxing your faith. But keeping pressing on with what he's called you to do, no matter what the enemy's trying to pull you with.
you know, and Yahweh is good. He knows how the enemy operates, and he knows what the enemy is going to try to throw, even before we do. But he always gives us things in advance so that we're prepared. You know, and I don't know if you ever noticed, but in certain times when certain things are taking place, that there's always that right word right for that time. So there's always that right devotion that comes up that's addressing that situation. There's always that right teaching that comes up that's addressing that situation. You know, and interesting, you know, there's been a lot over these past few weeks, because, you know, we're not alone in this. We're not alone. And there's churches all across this country that are dealing with attacks of the enemy. And there's leaders and pastors that are dealing with attacks from the enemy and stuff. But like I said, Yahweh is good. He's a good, good God all the time. You know, and it seems that we've been hearing through different camps and stuff, you know, all across the boards about how, you know, people and congregations and pastors and stuff, that the enemy's trying to attack with weariness, and he's trying to attack with tiredness, and he's trying to attack with thoughts of quitting or giving up. Or we're hearing it all across the boards. And you're hearing some big-time pastors that are talking about that. And interesting, though, and like I said, you know, I've noticed it over the last couple of weeks, with things like that, Yahweh's good. And when the devil is launching an attack, say with that, for example, Yahweh brings this whole realm of weapons to you to use to fight against that attack. So I've noticed myself personally over the last few weeks, like all these devotions, especially Rick Renner, you know, all these devotions over the last week, you know, you're strong in the Lord and the power and his might. You know, when you feel like giving up, go at it again. You know, all these different things, teachings that come up. What?
And songs.
And songs. And
like,
songs.
Suddenly this one particular song that may have been around for years suddenly comes across your path. Or it might not even be the most like, okay, yeah, Elevation Worship or Bethel wrote it. It's just like from the backyard of somewhere. It could even be like a children's song.
I was just gonna, yeah, it's kind of a funny little story, but, you know, Yahweh will like I said, he's good.
you
And he'll
through
speak to you through whatever. And I was sharing with a couple of people that, Australia schooling and stuff like that. We do some things with Khan Academy, but every once in a while they release a new song that will go along with a certain course. So I always watch the song, obviously. I preview everything first before I put it out in front of Australia. So I sat down to look at the song. And these are children's songs, okay? They're like base 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade or whatever. And so this one was set, it was an ocean theme. And I thought, oh, yay, ocean theme. They'll get my attention right away. Ocean and beach and all these little sea animals and stuff. And so I hit the song, and the song shows us, a fish, and the fish is attempting to try to do something, but it's not able to do it the first time, so he's trying to go at it again, but you can see the fish is getting frustrating. And the song starts, and the first line of the song sings, if you want to give up, go at it again. Keep on swimming, keep on swimming. If you want to give up, go at it again. Keep on swimming, keep on swimming. And there's other things that go with it. But then it goes to the second one, and it shows an octopus trying to do something and getting frustrating. And that part starts, and it starts to sing, if you feel like quitting, don't give up. Go at it again. You see him do it and try it and fails the first time. If you feel like quitting, don't give up. Go at it again. And then boom, finally, because they kept on going. And then there's a third part. I don't recall the third part right now, but interesting. The way the song ends, it shows a turtle, and the turtle is at the bottom of the ocean floor running a race. And at the end is a big banner across the thing that says finish line. And the turtle is running, and all these people are passing.
Like it's moving further away.
And all these people are going past them, but the finish line looks like it's getting further and further away. And the turtle, you can see, is starting to get tired and just kind of stops. But then all of a sudden, all his little sea creature friends come around her. Come on, Myrtle, you can do it. Don't Myrtle the turtle, right? Right? Come on, Myrtle. Don't give up. You can do it. Reminded me of Facing the Giants. Give me your best. Give me your best, Myrtle. Don't give up. And so she tries again, and it gets tired and stops. It's like, come on, Myrtle. You can finish this race. You got this, Myrtle. And you just all of a sudden see the strength build up in this little turtle and just boom, 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 and crosses over that finish line. And the song ended, and I thought, wow, there's some spiritual points in that, okay? Big time spiritual points. But don't take lightly anything that Yahweh may bring across your path like that. Because, hey, if it takes Myrtle the turtle to wake you up, okay, then go for it, go for it.
He used a donkey before, why can't he use a turtle?
Turtle, right. So anyways, to get around back to the Torah portion, Yahweh has given us a lot of things to run this race, but to make sure we run it all the way to the end. We're going to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, when we run this race all the way to the end. None of us are supposed to check out early from here. None of us are supposed to only run, 50 yards of the 100-yard race. We're all supposed to get past that finish line together.
And he's given us examples in the Torah, throughout the scriptures. It says in the New Testament that these are examples for you so that you don't lose your courage and faint. And they're given you as examples so that you can know what to do and you can know what not to do. Some of the examples in the Bible you're not supposed to follow. You're supposed to learn from them and say, they made a mistake there. I'm not going to do that. But they're all meant to be, the enemy doesn't have anything new under the sun. The same attacks he's come against people from time immemorial is the same attacks he's coming against us today. So if we can learn from the past, then we're not going to repeat the mistakes of our ancestors. We're going to be able to run the race and finish the course in victory.
So let's start at Exodus chapter 31, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, see, I have called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. And I have filled him with the Spirit of God in wisdom and ability, in understanding and intelligence, and in knowledge, and in all kinds of craftsmanship, to devise skillful works, to work in gold and in silver and in bronze, and in cutting of stones for setting and in carving of wood, to work in all kinds of craftsmanship. And behold, I have appointed with him Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and to all who are wise-hearted I have given wisdom and ability to make all that I have commanded you: the tent of meeting, the ark of the testimony, the mercy seat that is on it, all the furnishings of the tent, the table of the showbread and its utensils, the pure lampstand with all its utensils, the altar of incense, the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, the laver and its base, the finely worked garments, the holy garments for Aaron the high priest, and for his sons to minister as priests, and the anointing oil and incense of sweet spices for the holy place. According to all that I have commanded you shall they do. And the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, truly you shall keep my Sabbaths, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, the Lord, sanctify you, set you apart for myself. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does work on the Sabbath shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days may work be done, but the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, sacred to the Lord. Whoever does work on the Sabbath day shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the Israelites shall keep the Sabbath to observe it throughout their generations, a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he ceased and was refreshed. And he gave to Moses, when he had ceased communing with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tables of the testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God. Just a little rabbit trail for a second. I find it interesting where, he's talking to them about the Spirit of God and how they've been given wisdom and ability. But in the latter part of that chapter, he goes and he brings up the Sabbath. And one of the key things to be living victoriously and successfully in these times is the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created to give us rest. And in the midst of so much going on, we need the rest. That's the part. Rest physically, rest spiritually, rest emotionally, rest mentally. You need that rest in every single area. And he set apart this one day every single week for a reason: to give you rest. And in the times that we're in, we really need to, for lack of a better word, but really need to take advantage of the fact that he's given us the Sabbath. Because there's so much going on, you need to take that day to just step back. Like it said here, when you get up and, he's talking about Yahweh in verse 17, and on the seventh day he ceased. Okay, on the seventh day, he ceased from everything. He ceased from whatever has been going on in his world for that previous week. He ceased. And what happened? And was refreshed. Was refreshed. And we talked a bit lately about being renewed and restored and refreshed. And these times that we are in, we all need a refreshing. We all really need a refreshing. All around, like we just said, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And we need to take advantage of this and get that refreshing that Yahweh has set for us. But he also said that I sanctify you. I set you apart. That's part of making that quality decision, is that you're different. We're separated from the world. We may be in the world, but we're not of the world. And we are called to be a set apart, sanctified, holy people. And like we were saying the other day, so now we have a different way of living. We've been called up to a higher standard, and we've got to walk out in that higher standard. And if we walk out in that higher standard, that's what equips us to be able to overcome the enemy. You can't be going off doing your own thing and participating in things of the world and hanging out with people you shouldn't be hanging out with and talking the way you shouldn't be talking and expecting that you're going to reap the blessings of Yahweh, expecting that you're going to be able to overcome the enemy when he launches an attack. That's why we have got to get in us and see that we are a set-apart people. We are different, and we're different because of him.
And the whole idea is that we didn't choose him, he chose us. I pulled up a couple of verses about him choosing us. 1 Peter 2, verse 9 is familiar to us, but you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for God's own possession, so that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Just like what he was saying to the Israelites, that he sanctified them, that he set them apart, then he's setting us apart for his purposes. Ephesians 1, 4 through 5 says, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world. Think of it. You were chosen before the foundation of the world to be separated and set apart, that we would be holy and blameless before him in love. He predestined us to be adopted as sons through Yeshua the Messiah to himself, according to the kind intention of his will. So notice how many times it says you're sanctified, you're separated, you're chosen, but it's for a purpose. It's not just, oh, you're chosen. Figure out what that means. It's you're chosen for a purpose. You're chosen to be a people for God's own possession. You're chosen to be a holy nation. You're chosen to be holy and blameless before him. That you're chosen is for a purpose. John 15, 16 says, you did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you that you would go and bear fruit. See, there's the reason for the choosing, that you would go and bear fruit, and that your fruit would remain, so that whatever you ask of the Father in my name, he will give to you. Deuteronomy 14, verse 2 says, for you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. So out of everyone on the earth, you're chosen, but you're chosen for a purpose. And you're chosen, 2 Thessalonians 2:13 says, we should always give thanks to God for you, beloved brethren, by the Lord, because God has chosen you from the beginning for salvation through sanctification by the Spirit and faith in truth. So you are chosen to be sanctified. You're chosen to be set apart. Isaiah 43:10, you are my witnesses, declares the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen. Why? There's always a why after I've chosen. That you may know and believe me and understand that I am he. Before me no God was formed, nor shall there be any after me. So there's a purpose for the choosing. There's a purpose for the sanctification.
So we're going to focus on a second back in chapter 31, on verses 3 and 6, where it says, I have filled him with the Spirit of God and wisdom and ability and understanding and intelligence and in knowledge and in all kinds of craftsmanship. And in verse 6 where he says, and to all who are wise-hearted, I have given wisdom and ability to make all that I have commanded you.
You know, it says called by name in verse 2, I've called by name Bezalel. In verse 6, I have appointed with him Aholiab. That's another way of saying I've chosen. I've chosen these people for this purpose.
So all of us in here have been filled with the Spirit of God. Okay, we have the Spirit of Yahweh in us. But it's up to us to make sure that we're representing that Spirit correctly. You can be filled with the Spirit of God, but you could do nothing with it. You could be filled with the Spirit of God, and you could quench the Spirit. But we've all been filled with the Spirit of God for a reason. And with that comes wisdom and ability. He's granted us wisdom and ability and knowledge and understanding. And in these times that we're in, these are some of the important keys. There's quite a few of them, but these are some of the most vital ones that we need to operate in to be successful against the attacks of the enemy, to be successful against the plots and plans of the enemy. So just to go through a few of these, wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to make good judgments based on what you have learned from your experience, or the knowledge and understanding that gives you this ability. That's what wisdom is. But then you have ability. Ability is possession of the means or skill to do something. It's a skill or proficiency in a particular area. So now think of this. We've been given wisdom. We've been given the ability to use that wisdom through knowledge to overcome the enemy. Understanding, and we need to understand. We need to understand the way the enemy works. When you have a country that goes out to war, they have to know who the enemy is. They have to know who the enemy is, who they're fighting against. They have to know the tactics, and they have to have their strategies set in place beforehand before they go out to battle. So understanding is a comprehension. It's to perceive the intended meaning of something or interpret or view something. So you take with this the understanding and the wisdom and the ability that he's given us. He's given us so much, things that we need to be overcomers on this earth. The understanding, we think of in 1 Chronicles of the sons of Issachar. They understood the times that they had come into, and they knew how to operate in those times. They knew what to do. We need to understand the times we have come into, and we need to know what to do.
And that's an all-encompassing understanding. It's not just in one area of your life. Yeah, I understand spiritual matters, but I have no knowledge of what to do in the natural. There's a combination of things naturally, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that we need to be doing in order to walk successfully. Yahweh gave us what? They're all connected. And, you can have somebody who knows everything about spiritual warfare and praying against the enemy, but they're not doing anything in the natural, and like, okay, so yeah, I'm going to pray against the demonic powers that are over this particular area in the country, but then they go out and they vote for the very people that are putting those demonic powers in place, okay? So there's got to be a working together of the understanding of what's going on with natural, practical things to put in place. Okay, we know that Yahweh has given us the ability to be healed, to walk in health, to walk in divine health. That's been given to us as one of our promises as believers. But he's also given us natural things to come alongside of it. It can't be all spiritual, and I'm going to speak, I saw somebody who was like, praying, God bless my food as you're eating a fast food meal from McDonald's. Okay, and you got to make sure that you're combining the natural wisdom of, it's not wisdom to put certain things in your body. It's not wisdom to be watching certain things. It's not wisdom to be hearing certain things. And combine that together with the spiritual knowledge that he's already provided the healing for you. It's got to all work together hand in hand.
So knowledge is facts, information, and skills acquired by a person through experience or education by learning. It's an awareness or understanding of something. So all those things tie into being able to know who your enemy is and being able to know how to successfully overcome any attacks he may try to throw at us. You combine all those together and you operate in that, you become a pretty powerful warrior that the enemy can't overcome. And another thing that he said about further down in verse 6, he says, and to all who are wise-hearted, I have given wisdom. You have to be wise-hearted. Okay? We got to be operating as wise-hearted individuals. And it says, I will give them wisdom. So he has been made wisdom to us. So, all these things are combined. And you take all of these things, and it just puts us on, so to speak, a path of perfection. That's what we're supposed to be going after day after day after day. And so let's go jump to chapter 33. There's another thing that ties in with all of this. When you're walking in wisdom and understanding and have intelligence and ability, and when you know certain things and you know what Yahweh will do for you. And like Jordan was saying at the beginning, one of the big things that we've got to know and walk in these days is the favor of God. And we've talked about it here and there over the last couple of months. But right now, the favor of God is huge to be operating in our lives because of what favor is. But I'm going to read chapter 33 first. We'll just read the chapter. So the Lord said to Moses, depart, go up from here, you and the people who you have brought from the land of Egypt, to the land which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your descendants I will give it. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanite, Amorite, Hittite, Perizzite, Hivite, and Jebusite. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go up among you, for you are a stiff-necked people, lest I destroy you on the way. Just another little rabbit trail, but guard yourself from becoming stiff-necked. Okay, that's stubbornness. guard yourself from being stiff-necked and stubborn. The enemy will very subtly come in to try to operate that through you. And if you let that take root, stubbornness, stiff-necked, doing your thing your way, is a very hard thing to break in the natural. And that's why you've got to guard before it beforehand. Verse 4, when the people heard these evil tidings, they mourned, and no man put on his ornaments. For the Lord had said to Moses, say to the Israelites, you are a stiff-necked people. Now, if I ever heard that from the Lord, listen, you're a stiff-necked person, okay? You're stubborn. Better, okay, huh?
I said,
hit your face?
hit your face.
Well,
Maybe
that will
you are
slap
doing
you.
that too.
That will get you attention. You are a stiff-necked people. If I should come among you for one moment, listen to this. We don't ever want to hear Yahweh saying this to us. If I should come among you for one moment, I would consume and destroy you. Now therefore, leave off your ornaments, that I may know what to do with you. And the Israelites left off all their ornaments from Mount Horeb onward. Then now Moses used to take his own tent and pitch it outside the camp, far off from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting of God with his own people. And everyone who sought the Lord went out to that temporary tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. When Moses went out to the tent of meeting, all the people rose and stood, every man at his tent door, and looked after Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the door of the tent, and the Lord would talk with Moses. And all the people saw the pillar of cloud stand at the tent door, and all the people rose up and worshipped, every man at his tent door. And the Lord said to Moses, face to face, as a man speaks to his friend. Think that's impactful. That's the relationship we have with him, to speak to us face to face as a man speaks to his friend. Moses returned to the camp, but his minister Joshua, son of Nun, a young man, did not depart from the tent. Moses said to the Lord, see, you say to me, bring up this people, but you have not let me know whom you will send with me. Yet you said, I know you by name, and you have also found favor in my sight. Now therefore I pray you, if I have found favor in your sight, show me now your way, that I may know you, progressively become more deeply and intimately acquainted with you, perceiving and recognizing and understanding more strongly and clearly, and that I may find favor in your sight. And Lord, do consider that this nation is your people. And the Lord said, my presence shall go with you, and I will give you rest. And Moses said to the Lord, if your presence does not go with me, do not carry us up from here. For by what shall it be known that I and your people have found favor in your sight? Is it not in your going with us that we are distinguished, I and your people, from all the other people upon the face of the earth? That's what it's about. It's his presence. His presence is what sets us apart. That's a powerful thing that he just said right there. Okay, from all the other people upon the face of the earth, you have distinguished us.
And what is the Hebrew word that means God with us? Emmanuel. So Yeshua comes as Emmanuel, God with us. And that's what sets us apart from everyone else on the earth. It's his presence in our lives that sets us apart from everyone else.
Verse 17, and the Lord said to Moses, I will do this thing also that you have asked, for you have found favor, loving kindness and mercy in my sight, and I know you personally and by name. See, there it is again. Okay. Catch all these nuggets. These are powerful, powerful nuggets. You know what? We're reading about him speaking this to Moses, but he speaks that to each and every one of us. Okay, take that personal. He's speaking it to you. He's saying to you, I know you personally and by name. You have found favor in my sight. I have set you apart for me. This is the creator of all things, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that is saying that to each one of us personally. I know you personally. I speak to you face to face like a friend. That's our Yahweh. That's our Yahweh. And Moses said, I beseech you, show me your glory. And God said, I will make all my goodness pass before you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, before you. For I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy and loving kindness on whom I will show mercy and loving kindness. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live. And the Lord said, behold, there is a place beside me, and you shall stand upon the rock. And while my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. That's a powerful encounter between him and Moses. I'm going to show you all my goodness, all my glory. But his goodness is so great. His glory is so great. He had to protect Moses. He had to put him in that cleft of the rock. And what did he do? He didn't just put him in the cleft of the rock. He covered him with his hand. Think of that. Yahweh covers us with his hand. Whatever we're doing, wherever we go, he has his hand over us, covering us and protecting us, because he's a good, good God.
And it's interesting because Moses' request was, show me your glory. And his answer was, I will cause all my goodness. Of all the attributes that Yahweh could have showed him, he could have shown him his power. I will show you my power. I will show you my might. I will show you my goodness. The fact that is the one thing that Yahweh wanted to be identified with him, to be an impression in Moses, was his goodness. And by the way, his goodness was so powerful that Moses ended up needing a veil over his face when he went to see the Israelites, because it was so shining. Goodness, he's literally dripping with everything good to such an extent that when you get in his presence next to him, all that goodness gets on you. It changes who you are. It changes the very structure of your body. And that's why sin can't stay in his presence. What is sin? What is bad? What is evil? It's opposite of good. You have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So evil is opposite of what is good. So anything that doesn't fall in the good category can't exist in his presence. So if it's in you, it's either going to be obliterated or it's going to obliterate you if you're so full of it. If you're so full of something that's bad and it's gotten into the structure of your very existence, it's like that curse that gets down into the bones. When somebody loves cursing, it gets down into the bones. If it gets down into the very structure of who you are, that's why he said you can't see me and live. Because it's literally going to obliterate anything that's not good. And that's all of you, pretty much. But the fact that he showed Moses his goodness, we sung about the goodness of God. We got to focus on the goodness of God. Because no matter what's gone on in the world around us, no matter what the enemy might have brought into our lives, no matter what, he is good. He is good all the time. And we got to keep the line straight as far as that.
Just like he identified with Moses with that, that's how he wants to identify with us. He wants to identify with us with that goodness. Like Jordan said, if you're in that place with him, if you're in that place of his presence and that goodness, anything of evil that tries to get to you cannot exist. Anything that tries to come at you, whether it's a disease or a sickness or poverty, lack, whatever the enemy tried to throw, when you're enwrapped in that goodness of Yahweh, it can't get through that.
He surrounds us with his favor as with a shield.
Right.
His goodness and his favor.
Yep. And it's just, we're in that impenetrable shield of goodness and favor. Jordan just mentioned about that song that we sang, goodness of God. You think of the words in that. He has been faithful all of our lives. Even though maybe sometimes we didn't think or see it, he was faithful our entire lives. We would not be standing in this building right now. None of us would be here if it wasn't for his faithfulness, if it wasn't for his goodness, if it wasn't for his love. All of our lives, he has been faithful. And all of our lives, he has been so, so good. And what is it? His goodness is running after us. That song is very, very accurate. Very accurate. His goodness is running after us. It's always running after us. All the days of our lives, from the moment that we lay our head down to the moment we wake up, Yahweh's goodness is right there. And we've got to be living in that goodness. We've got to be just totally soaking ourselves in that goodness. Because when you're soaking yourself in His presence. And when you're in that place, it's kind of like a little child, and they get themselves into a situation, so the bully comes along, and the bully's going after that little child. But all of a sudden, that mama comes out from behind the scenes. Well, mama, that's why I didn't use daddy, but mama, that mama bear comes out from behind the scenes and steps in front of that child, and it's like, excuse me? You want to say that again? Want to go at that again? You didn't know that child had a big daddy or mommy backing him up. That's how He is, because He's so, so good. That goodness overcomes all. So favor. He spoke to Moses and said, I have given you favor. And Moses recognized it. If I have found favor in your sight, your favor sets me apart, sets us apart. So when you look at favor, favor, when you think of it in a general sense, it's an act of kindness. It's an act of what somebody does. I favor you in a certain situation or whatever. An act of kindness beyond what is due or usual. All right? That's what favor is. But when you turn it into with Yahweh, and you look at the biblical meaning of favor in the Hebrew, it's Yahweh stepping into one situation to make it different. So you have a situation come at you, a challenge come at you, and when you call on the favor of Yahweh, on the goodness of Him, He comes into that situation to make it different. He comes right in on the scenes, just like that mother or father came into that situation to make it a different story for that child. He comes into our stories to make it different.
That's what He did with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Mm-hmm. He stepped into the fire with them, not only protecting them from the fire, but it became such a display of the favor of God on their lives that it impacted an entire nation. And that's what it's supposed to be. The favor of God on our life isn't just for our enjoyment. It's not just for our benefit. It's not just for me, myself, and I. It's so that we can impact the world around us. When they see the favor of God on our lives, it's going to spread to them. It's going to, some of that goodness, that favor of God that's on our lives is going to rub off on them. It's going to change them. And then they, in turn, can change someone else. It's spreading. It's supposed to be a contagious thing in a good way, that we spread it to others.
And when you operate in this favor, you got to know what favor is. And you got to exercise it, because it's one of the things He's given us. Favor changes rules and regulations wherever we go. It changes rules and regulations wherever we go. Just because man says something does not mean it's final say. Okay? They don't have the last say. They don't have the last move. Favor changes rules and regulations. Favor changes situations and circumstances. Favor gives us preferential treatment wherever we go. All right? This is what the favor of Yahweh does for us. Favor causes people to do things for us that they might not otherwise do, because we are sons and daughters of the Most High God. Favor causes something that has been lost to be brought back into the light. Okay? Favor causes something that somebody may have done to you to be totally reversed and rewritten. That's the favor of Yahweh. Favor turns anything that the enemy may try to do. What the enemy means for evil, Yahweh always turns for what? Good. Because it's of His goodness. So I wanted to read this to you, like I said earlier. How certain things come up at just the right time when you're trying to go for a point or have something that you're overcoming or whatever. And so Rick Renner came out with this the other day, and it's called Stopping Satan at His Own Game. And that's what we've been talking about. We need to be having wisdom and knowledge to be able to stop the devil at his own game. Being able to operate in the favor of Yahweh to stop Satan. Satan may try to cause a delay with something, but favor will change that delay. Satan may try to cause a certain situation, but favor will change that situation on our behalf.
But when we look at Moses having favor with God, he had a part to play in the fact that the favor was able to work in his life. It was Moses' obedience to Yahweh that opened the door for the favor of God to work in his life. It's our obedience that will open the door for that favor.
So stopping Satan at his own game. In the verse that he used was 2 Corinthians 2:11, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. So I don't like talking about the devil, but time after time, the Bible warns us that the devil is like a roaring lion who roams about seeking whom he can destroy. Whether we like it or not, the devil is a real personality who is looking for ways to destroy our lives. Since the Bible frequently warns us about this sinister enemy, we need to know how the devil operates. Now, we were just talking about this, how the devil operates, how to identify the devil's attacks at their very onset, how to block and stop his devilish assaults, and how to prevent repeat attacks from occurring in the future. In 2 Corinthians 2:11, the Apostle Paul wrote a verse that is teeming with insight to answer these questions. He wrote, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. Paul clearly understood that Satan was constantly seeking ways to take advantage of people. The word advantage in this verse is the Greek word pleonakito. This word means to outwit, to trick, to take advantage of someone through sinister or sneaky means. It is a compound of the word pleon, which means more, and the word echo, which means to have. Together, these words form the word pleo-echo, which denotes a desire to have more, and more. It is a form of the word pleonexia, the Greek word for greediness. In this case, in 2 Corinthians 2:11, it pictures someone whose lust for something is so intense that he will take any actions required to obtain what he wants. Flip that for a minute to us. We should be an individual whose passion to overcome the enemy is so intense that we will take actions required to get what we want. Whatever it takes. We will take actions that require to get that healing. We will take the actions, whatever it takes, to have our finances break through. Whatever it takes. Because Paul used this word about Satan, we are alerted to the fact that Satan desperately wants something in his control. He wants us. The devil will use any method necessary to take advantage of us and get us under his control. He will deviously and artfully endeavor to outwit us, trick us, dominate us, and ultimately take us as his hostages. That is why Paul said, we are not ignorant of his devices. And this is where wisdom and ability and understanding come in. When you have an enemy who hates you this much and who wants to destroy you, you can't afford to be ignorant. In Paul's case, he and his team were invading new territory with the gospel all the time. Paul knew that Satan wanted to hinder and even stop them, and that it was therefore essential for him to understand the way the devil operated. He had to be able to discern whether he was facing a mere human challenge or a planned demonic attack. Likewise, you need to know if the storm you're facing right now is just a natural challenge that will blow over, or if you are facing demonic turbulence sent from hell to disrupt Yahweh's plan for your life. I dare to say it's the latter, okay? It's the latter. 99.9% of the time, it's that. You can't just shut your eyes and hope the problem will work out by itself. If this is an attack from the devil and you do nothing to stop it, it will not simply go away. If you run off to the beach in the midst of it, it will not simply go away, okay? On the contrary, it will actually increase and become more intense. That's why being able to recognize Satan's game is so important. The word ignorant in 2 Corinthians 2:11 is the Greek word agnoio, and it refers to one's ignorance or lack of certain facts. However, it also includes making mistakes or errors due to a lack of understanding. Okay, we're talking about understanding. If you don't understand something, you can make mistakes and errors, okay? It is the picture of an uneducated person who, due to a lack of knowledge, is prone to arrive at mistaken conclusions. The word agnoio depicts someone who is in the dark or without a clue. Because this person lacks understanding, his conclusions are faulty, erroneous, and misguided. This is where we get the word agnostic, the official name used to describe individuals who claim they don't know what they believe. So when someone claims to be agnostic, he is literally claiming to be ignorant. An example of this kind of ignorance is often seen when a person is diagnosed with a terminal disease sent from the devil, yet the person believes his sickness comes from God. Because the sick person is ignorant of the fact that Satan and not God is the author of sickness and disease, he mistakenly concludes that his sickness must be God's will for his life. This ignorance is so devastating that it could possibly lead to that individual's premature death. Do you see how dangerous it is to remain ignorant about how the devil operates? This is the reason Paul says we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. Paul and his companions had carefully observed how the devil operates and the primary methods he uses to attack. As a result, they knew how to recognize the onset of an attack when Satan started maneuvering to frustrate their plans. Paul and his team were definitely not in the dark about the devil. Hence, the enemy found it much more difficult to take advantage of them. Paul had to learn these things because he faced challenges with people, religious leaders, governmental leaders, and even with friends. He was thrown in prison, cast into the sea, and beaten during moments of persecution. Traps were constantly being set for his capture, and he constantly had to be on the lookout for people who tried to use him and take advantage of him. Paul couldn't afford to be in the dark spiritually about the way Satan operated, and neither can you. But notice what Paul says next. We are not ignorant of Satan's devices. The word devices is the Greek word noemata, derived from the word nous. The word nous is the word for the mind or the intellect. However, when the word nous becomes the word noemata, it describes a mind that is scheming, calculating, conniving, devious, shrewd, sly, or clever. This is very significant because it alerts us to the reality that Satan isn't just hoping to hinder us. He is incessantly scheming and conniving to injure or deliberately mess up a person's plans, health, marriage, business, and family. The enemy doesn't really care how he accomplishes his evil plan. He just wants to find ways to ruin whatever that person holds dear. Thus, the word noemata denotes Satan's insidious, malevolent plot to attack and victimize human beings, clearly demonstrating that the devil loves to captivate and ultimately destroy human beings. If this devilish process is not aborted by the power of God, it is only a matter of time before Satan puts the last touches on his plan to captivate a person, family, church, ministry, business, organization, or even an entire nation. And that's what we're beginning to see. Actually, not beginning, we have been seeing. Okay? Not just among persons or families or churches, but entire nations he's trying to take under his captivity. When you put all of these words together, it expresses this idea. Satan can forget it if he thinks he's going to pull the wool over our eyes. We know how he operates, and we understand the way he schemes and connives to take us out. So don't shut your eyes and ignore the fact that the devil wants to bring about your downfall. Instead, open your eyes and allow Holy Spirit to teach you how to recognize the devil's operations so you won't fall prey to him any longer. Then you'll be able to say, "Devil, I know this is you attacking me, so I am telling you to leave now in Yeshua's name." And that's what we've got to remember. It's the devil. It's not people. Okay? It's not flesh and blood. It's the spirits operating behind them. But just like what he said right here, we're not ignorant of his devices. We know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Because we are a people that have been granted all wisdom and understanding and ability. Just like the sons of Issachar. All of us in here, we do have an understanding of the times. We do know what to do. And we need to make sure that we have a keen sense of discerning discerning, is this of Yahweh or is this of the enemy? Is this person of Yahweh or is this of the enemy? You know, I do perceive you are not from God, okay? We need to have this keen discernment. And in these times, we've got to rise up, knowing who we are and whose we are. Sons and daughters of the Most High King, powerful warriors that have been planted on this earth, just like Esther was, for such a time as this. Because we've got major, major things to accomplish for our King, to advance the kingdom. And when it comes down to it, it's all for his glory.
And you know, how much does the word talk about not being ignorant of what the enemy's trying to do and about avoiding his plots, avoiding his schemes? You know, Genesis 4:6-7, Yahweh says to Cain, and Cain's in the midst of this, he's caught in his emotions. You know, the biggest place where you can get trapped is when you're in your emotions. That's where the enemy that's his battleground, is in your mind and it's in your emotions. But Yahweh says to Cain, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. So it's much like when he's saying about the enemy roaming around like a lion, seeking whom he can devour. This sin crouching at your door gives the picture of like an animal that's stalking someone, that's stalking its next meal, waiting to ambush as soon as you let your guard down. But if you're aware that animal is crouched out there, you have your weapons, you have whatever you need to be able to protect yourself, to be able to ward off the attack. Or you go out a different way, you know. If you know that it's right outside that door, then go out the back door, because you know he's not out the back door. Actually, Proverbs has a lot to say about that, about making sure that you watch what path you're on. Proverbs 5:8 says, let your way in life be far from her, talking about the loose woman, and come not near the door of her house. Why? Because sin is crouching at her door, okay? Avoid the very scenes of temptation. Another translation says, avoid even being near the places of temptation. So if you know there's certain places where it's more likely that there's going to be someone crouched outside waiting to attack you, you wouldn't go to that place. You would avoid going to that place. You got to see the enemy the same way. Okay, there's certain places where he's going to be set up there. He's sly. Proverbs 4:14-15 says, enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, do not go on it, turn from it, and pass on. So wisdom says to avoid the situation. You know, we're talking about wisdom and ability and knowledge. Avoid the situation altogether. But this ties into the portion that we kind of skipped over that chapter. But if you go back to Exodus chapter 32, what you have is the entire situation of the golden calf. And you can look at it and say, how in the world these people had been serving the Lord, that he brought them out with these mighty acts of great goodness, and he's delivered them, and they see the mountain, the mountain's shaking. Remember, Exodus chapter 19 already happened, okay? They saw the mountain shaking. They were trembling in fear. Moses goes up. Now suddenly they're in this place where they're caught off guard by the enemy. And we can see how. Exodus 32, verse 1, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, they gathered together to Aaron and said to him, up, make us gods to go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. So again, they're in their emotions. They're not following Yahweh. They're not listening to him. They're not waiting on his timing. As soon as you jump into your emotions, you get impatient, you jump ahead of him, sin is crouching at your door and its desires for you. Okay? When you jump ahead of where Yahweh has you placed, he had them placed at the foot of the mountain. And your job is to wait until Moses comes down. He didn't give them a time frame. He didn't tell them how long Moses was going to be up there. They got antsy, and isn't that human nature? If something you see that you know that it's a promise of God that's coming, and you're believing for something, you start to get antsy if it doesn't happen right away. But then the danger of getting antsy is you start to try to do things in the natural that are outside of God's plan to try to accomplish it. Abraham and Sarah, you have that whole situation. Well, it's not happening quite when we want it to. So they come up with the brilliant idea of here's Hagar. And we still are dealing with the messes from that. So one person's errors, one person's mistakes don't just affect them. They affect everyone. So if you move on, verse 2, Aaron replied, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron, and he received the gold at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a molten calf. And they said, these are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw the molten calf, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. And they rose up early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. The Lord said to Moses, go down, for your people, it's kind of like the husband and wife there, it's your child now. Your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made a molten calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, that brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. So he's saying again, they're stiff-necked people. I want to pause there for a moment because this whole situation can be quite confusing. You have them bringing the gold to Aaron. Aaron makes it, and then they say, these are your gods. And it says, when Aaron saw the molten calf, well, he made the molten calf. So how did he suddenly see the molten calf? And then you have all kinds of scenarios. Just look at what the rabbis say. And they try to explain away a lot of things. But one thing I wanted to bring out, which I thought was very interesting, is when you look at the original Hebrew, it says, make us God. Elohim is the word there, okay? It's not necessarily saying like plural form of idols. It's saying, make us God. And they say, this is God. This translation said, these are your gods, but the original Hebrew says, this is God, okay? And the word God is Elohim. It's clear from the original context, the Israelites were not intending on going into idol worship. They were not intending on going and worshiping a golden calf. They were intending that they're trying to worship God in a way that he forbade. Moses isn't there. Moses isn't the mediator. We need another mediator, so we're going to make a calf, which is going to be the mediator between us and Yahweh. They're still intending on worshiping Yahweh. Aaron says to them, tomorrow shall be a feast to the Lord. That word, the Lord, is Yahweh. He's not saying go worship the golden calf. So that was not their intention. What do we know? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Intentions have nothing to do with the outcome. But why did they choose a calf? They were surrounded by calves in Egypt. A lot of people say that. But there's another interesting idea of the reason that they chose a calf. Think of the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph. The ancient symbol of the Aleph was that of an ox. An ox was the symbol of strength. It was the symbol, it symbolizes leadership. It symbolizes the father of all. It represents God. So ox being the strong, the head, it's representing God. And it appears in all of Yahweh's names. El Shaddai is Aleph Lamed. If you have Elohim, Aleph Lamed. So the Aleph is the premier. They're looking at it as that's the symbol of Yahweh. So they're basically trying to honor God by taking this calf. But God never told them to do that, okay? Again, if you take something and try to worship God in a way that he forbids you to worship, that's sin. Doesn't matter your intentions, doesn't matter, my heart was in the right place, I still wanted to worship you. It doesn't matter. But it ends up getting them into this place. Worship done in the wrong way is actually sin. And the golden calf is an image to us, an example of worshiping the true God in the wrong way. It leads them into sin. Did they intend necessarily to get into sin? I don't think so. A lot of people misinterpret that and say, well, see, they were going into idolatry. They were actually breaking the second commandment, which is to make no image, a graven image of God. You know, you're not to have any image of God. He doesn't want a possibility of there being an idol of him made. But they did not go and serve other gods. It was supposed to be a representation of Yahweh. But the whole reason that they even did it was because they became impatient. They became impatient with his timing, and they decided to try to do something on their own. And that's when sin was crouching at their door. They didn't master it, obviously. And so he ends up coming down. You have the whole thing where Moses comes down, and then you have Joshua in verse 17. He hears the noise of the people as they shouted, and he said to Moses, there's the noise of war in the camp. And Moses is teaching him the difference in the sound. There's a difference in the sound, and Moses knows. He says it's not the sound of shouting for victory, neither is it the sound of cry of defeat, but the sound of singing that I hear. And then in verse 19, Moses smashes the tablets. By the way, that tablet was signifying the marriage contract that they were about to enter into with Yahweh. Better for them to be judged as not being bound by the contract yet than for them to be already bound by that contract. There's a lot more serious judgment that comes upon someone who's under covenant, if you've covenanted yourself to that. But then you have the whole thing where he takes the calf and he grinds it into powder, makes them drink it, and this whole thing. At this point, Yahweh's upset. Understandably, he's upset. Where did the gold they fashioned this calf come from? Egypt. Remember when they left Egypt, they plundered the Egyptians. That was a gift that Yahweh had given them. They took a gift that Yahweh had given them and used it in a way that was not according to his design. Remember when we were reading about Bezalel and Aholiab? They were given the spirit of wisdom and understanding in what to craft, how to craft it, and how to use it for the service of the Lord. There's a wisdom that comes along with whatever he's given you. And you got to always make sure you're walking in that wisdom so that you're not putting yourself in the path of the wicked. You're not putting yourself in the path where the enemy can catch you off guard and unawares and get you into sin. Later on in verse 26 and all that, he says, he stood in the gate of the camp and said, whoever is on the Lord's side, let him come to me. Again, we talked in the beginning about drawing that line in the sand. And if you remember, I remember all those years ago when Dad was talking about drawing that line in the sand. And the whole picture is you draw that line in the sand, and it's like there's a cliff behind you. You can't go back. To go back is death. You draw that line in the sand, and you're on this side, and you're on that side to stay. There's no going back and forth. There's no wavering between two opinions. You're making your choice, and you're staying there. Whoever's on the Lord's side, let him come to me. And all the Levites gathered together to him. So the Levites had kept themselves from all this idolatry that was going on. They were not participating. They knew that it was not the way God had wanted them to go. And he said to them, thus says the Lord God of Israel, every man put his sword on his side and go in and out from gate to gate throughout the camp and slay every man his brother and every man his companion and every man his neighbor. That had to have been a hard stand to take. You've got to figure it. He's saying his brother, his companion, and his neighbor. These are people you know. These are people who you're close with. But this sin is so, the effects of this sin are so devastating that you got to deal with it, even if it's someone that you love, even if it's someone that's right there. And the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moses, and there fell of the people that day about 3,000 men. Now that seems to indicate not all of the Israelites were involved in this. Only 3,000 fell. But verse 29 is interesting because it says, and Moses said to the Levites, by your obedience to God's command, you have consecrated yourselves today as priests to the Lord. Now, Yahweh already set them apart as priests, but their actions this day is where they consecrated themselves. They took their stand on Yahweh's side, and they showed it. Each man at the cost of being against his own son and against his own brother, that the Lord may restore and bestow his blessing upon you this day, the favor of God. By their obedience, they were gaining the favor of God upon them. The next day, Moses said to the people, you have sinned a great sin, and now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. So Moses returned to the Lord and said, oh, this people have sinned a great sin and have made themselves gods of gold. Yet now, if you will forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray you, out of your book which you have written. I mean, that's a lot like Esther when she said, if I die, I die. Here's Moses saying, if you're not going to forgive them, fine, blot me out of your book. I'll take the penalty for their judgment. Who do we know who stepped in the gap and took the penalty for our judgment? Yeshua. He was a foreshadowing of Yeshua, giving that way, paving the way of the deliverer. Yet, verse 33, but the Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him, not you, out of my book. But now go, lead the people to the place of which I have told you. Behold, my angel shall go before you. Nevertheless, in the day when I punish, I will visit their sin upon them. And the Lord sent a plague upon the people because they made a calf which Aaron fashioned for them. Then you move into chapter 33, and it gives some context. When he's pleading with him, he's literally being an intercessor. He's standing in the gap. And Moses' obedience, Moses' willingness to stand in the gap is what opens the door for his entire encounter with Yahweh. It opens the door for that powerful encounter with him where Yahweh says to him, my presence shall go with you and I will give you rest. And he ends up having this communion with him because he completely laid himself aside. Moses wasn't doing any of this for himself. Moses hadn't done anything. He was with the Lord when all the people were doing all this. He didn't have to do what he was doing, but because he did, it opened a door for the favor of God. And it affected not just him, but it affected the nation. His standing in the gap affected the entire nation. One person can make a difference. And so he comes to the place where in verse 21 of chapter 33, Yahweh says to him, behold, there is a place beside me. There's just something about that phrase. He could have said, there's a place here. You can go and stand here. There's a place beside me. It's just, that's by his side, and he's inviting him to literally come and stand by him. And as he stands by him, that's when he covers him with the shadow of his hand and protects him. And if we're going to be walking in victory in these end times, we need to make sure that we are staying on the right track, not getting ahead of Yahweh's timing, that we're not getting impatient, that we're not allowing these openings in our life where the enemy can take advantage of us. We're not ignorant of his wiles. He's going to be crouching at the door. He's going to be trying to get you into sin. He even did it with Moses. He was crouching at Moses' door. And if you remember when he got to that point of striking the rock, when he was supposed to speak to the rock, we got to always be on guard. Always. Doesn't matter. From the moment your eyes open, you got to be aware that there is an enemy out there that's trying to seek who he can devour. But the good news is that you have all the power and authority over him. When you say, I've given you power and authority over all the works of the enemy, nothing shall by any means harm you. Given you power and authority to tread on serpents and scorpions. In Psalm 91, it says that you'll tread underfoot the lion and the adder. Okay, so the enemy's walking around like a roaring lion, but you're treading on lions. That means you're trampling underfoot all the works that he's trying to get done in your life. You're victorious over it. Only if you're in position. Only if you're not compromising. The only way that the Hebrew children didn't burn in that fiery furnace was because they refused to compromise. They stayed on God's side and he was on their side. Because they were on his side, he came through and his favor turned around that impossible situation. I mean, so impossible that, the people who were throwing them into the furnace, they were consumed by the flames. That was an impossible situation for them to get out of if it wasn't for the favor and protection of God. This is a time, this is a day and an age when we need to make sure that we are walking completely in the favor and protection of God. You don't want to be a moment without the favor of God. You know, even Yeshua, it says that he found favor with God and man. If you're in the position that you're called to be, if you're doing what you're called to do, that will go before you and pave a way for you to find that favor and to be able to get to the place where you're called to be. And that's where we are called to be. Amen? That's where we are supposed to walk as the sons and daughters of God. That's where he has called us, and he has all the blessings and all the goodness that he wants to shower upon us. But we have to position ourselves in alignment with it so that we can receive it. Amen? Well, we thank you for joining us today. We trust you've gotten something out of this message. We will see you on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Until then, you have a blessed week. We thank